Socky, come on. Oh, sit with me. He's been sitting all morning with me. It's Friday morning, Good Friday. Feels like Sunday. It's quiet, of course. I hope everyone's okay. I've had some good days of reading and work this week. I wrote a whole short story for an anthology I'm currently co-editing. Details of that will be around soon, but it was good to do a whole short story, 6,000 word short story. That is the kind of summation of a whole set of characters that I worked with years ago. That's as explicit as I'm going to be about that just now. I can't tell you what it is. Anyway, it's going to be a nice anthology for charity. Oh, Socky. Oh, come and sit here. Now, reading has been fantastic. I've talked about this already. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I finished this yesterday. I saved the last 30 pages and I was carrying this around and reading it everywhere. I read it in the waiting room of my dentist yesterday when I had my 6-monthly checkup on my teeth, and huge relief, nothing needed doing. I was tapped and polished and sent out, and we went for lunch and we went and got shopping, and it was quite a busy day of doing stuff, but every time I could I sat down and read the last section of this, all the war stuff, all the ultra dramatic stuff. This is such a good book. It's been out, it turns out, 14 years, and I feel a fool for not having got to it sooner. I don't know what put me off. I always think, oh, I don't know all the classical myths and the Iliad and the Odyssey, but I do. I mean, I might not remember them. I couldn't sit down and tell you who's who and what's what. A bit of it, maybe. But I've read so many versions over the years of all these things, I guess, that it's all there, and it doesn't need any explaining to me when I read stuff about it. This is a lovely new take on the whole Trojan War. It's romantic, and it's sexy, and it's homoerotic, and it's blood and thunder and violent and so dramatic, especially at the end. I think it's probably the best first novel I've ever read. That's saying something. I'll have to think about that. But she's right on the money with her first book. Trying to think of other first novels that I've loved as much as this. Maybe M.R. Loverick and Carnivale. That would be a good contender. Her novel about Byron and Casanova and the female painter who connects them. Another historical novel that seeks to put an unheard voice into the middle of a story or set of stories that we know from history. Here's another one that puts a gay voice in the middle of the Trojan War. And the whole idea of voices speaking out of the past that haven't been heard before, and how they're kind of like tortured souls still drifting all around in the world, and feminism has had this, and black writing's had this, and gay writing's got it. But this is the best image of this I've ever seen, when Patroclus is... Oh, this is spoilers. Don't listen if you don't want spoilers. When he's speaking from beyond his own death at the end, I told you there were spoilers, but it's, old news, isn't it? The classics. And he has that wonderful image of still seeing people alive, seeing Achilles and everybody still alive. And it's like seeing their faces is like seeing the sun from the point of view of a fish underwater. I thought that was beautiful and really made sense of something mystical. So he's roaming around the world, wanting to be not honoured, just remembered as the partner of Achilles. And of course, Achilles' son Pyrrhus turns up and wants nothing of this. They were never together. It's a demeaning of his own father's legend. And of course, Pyrrhus is an awful character, as we find out. And by the end, of course, the name of Patroclus is added to the tomb, and he is set free to go into the underworld with his beloved. But what a fantastic image of names being restored to history, names that have been stamped out because of prejudice. So it's really fighting on the right side, a book about war that fights on the right side, and not, quotes the right side of history. I don't mean that. I mean in the terms of the valorization of voices and people that have been squashed out of the narrative in the past. Anyway, what a fantastic book. And I hear that Circe, her follow-up, is even better. So that will be added to my ever-lengthening list of books. There's a whole subgenre of Greek retellings that have cropped up since the success of this in 2011. Big, whacking great novels called things like Medea or whoever. Mostly feminist, I think, mostly kind of rescuing women from these stories. And I want to read the Pat Barker book trilogy about Troy, because she's reliable. All of this goes back in this country to the feminists of the 70s and 80s. People like Sarah Maitland and Michelle Roberts and so on, who wrote short stories mostly, retelling bits of myths for kind of feminist purposes, rescuing voices from the brink, turning tales upside down. But this recent genre is making them into these big, grand epics, these whacking great books that will tell the whole of the myth cycle in one fell swoop. What's very interesting about this is the distortions that are necessarily made, so that the famous bit of Troy, the wooden horse, gets one sentence in the whole story, and that's amazing, to turn our received notions on their heads. And that seems to me to be the point of all fiction. The things that we think we know are turned on their heads, and we see things from a very different point of view. For me, it's a very familiar point of view. The love affair between the two fellas at the heart of this is so vivid. How dare she? Madeline Miller, how dare she write M/M fiction and make it feel so real when she's a woman. This is the fallacy, of course, of the own voices movement, where, as in acting, you can only write about or pretend to be the thing that you are. Only gay writers can write about gay characters, only gay actors can blah-de-blah-de-blah, that kind of idea of spurious authenticity. And I do think it's spurious because these are artifacts, aren't they? When you act, when you write, when you perform, when you put on a voice in any sense, it's testament to your skill, this series of masks you put on. And here she is, this woman writing about these gay men in history and just kind of nailing it. How does she know this stuff? And there's stuff about revenge sex and the kind of shenanigans that goes on between men and women that's very telling and very frightening, disturbing, actually. Anyway, so it's a book that gave me lots to think about. It took about a week to relish being in this world, this dusty, filthy, exciting and transporting story. Yeah, I feel like I've been away somewhere for a few days. And it's a heavy old book, and I've been carrying it around with me. Reminded me a bit of reading Silver Sword last year, the retelling of the Arthurian cycle of stories by Lev Grossman that was probably my favourite book of last year. A huge walking book that does the whole myth cycle, but from the point of view of the marginalised voices. Again, the poor, the Muslim, the trans, the gay, the disabled, all these figures around the round table who didn't get much of a look in before, have the further adventures in the world of Arthurian legend and retell the old stories. And so Lev Grossman does all of that within one book as well. How interesting that these old stories are getting retellings in the present day in this particular way, and they're turning out to be my favourite books of each year. So I need to know which others are around there. Here we've got the Tale of Troy, and there was the tale of King Arthur. I want to know what other cycles of myths have had those kinds of retellings in recent times. Some I must know, I must be aware of them. But it's interesting putting together a kind of interesting reading list of contemporary, queerish, magical retellings. They're also a bit superhero-ish. Like the Lev Grossman book, I think we come at this through our own understanding of what spectacular, heroic stories are, and that has to include the Marvel universe, the DC universe, superhero narrative. The people who are writing these books grew up through those things as well. And as somebody said, the reason that the superhero movies are there is because they are the way we tell the old stories to a mass audience nowadays. Anyway, that's me pontificating about heroism. I do recommend this. I know I'm late to the story, and you probably have all already read it, and everything I've just said, you're all going, yeah, we know all that. So that was by tea time yesterday. Then there was an arrival in the post. I've been waiting for this to turn up since I heard about it. I think I heard about this at the beginning of the year. I couldn't believe it was happening. It's the first Golden Girls related novel. The Golden Girls is my favourite sitcom ever. And I like a lot of sitcoms. It might even be my favourite TV show. It's certainly the one I watch for comfort the most. It ran from the mid-80s to the early 90s. So from my being a awkward mid-teen about to begin my O-levels into the person I was when I was doing my PhD. And me and my friend Bill would watch the Golden Girls and then set off into town to Lancaster's only gay bar, where half the people there looked like the Golden Girls, or as Bill used to say, like the people in the Mos Eisley cantina. That was the early 90s on the scene in Lancaster. So it was a big chunk of my life watching that show, and ever since the DVDs have come out, I've watched them all again and again. There's one episode, I think it's called The Case of the Liberty Bell, where they go to a murder mystery evening and it turns into a real mystery. And it always made me think, they should have done more murder mysteries. There should have been a TV movie, maybe with Angela Lansbury guesting, where they solve a real murder mystery. Of course, it never happened, and there was never a reunion movie. The scale of the show never moved beyond the usual studio sets and tiny bit of location filming, which was always a shame. I'd have loved to see something where we got to see St. Olaf, or we went with Dorothy back to Brooklyn, say, on location. The scale never widened, and we never saw them again. Except now, just like Murder, She Wrote got its endless series of sequels in murder mystery novel form, that's what they've done to the Golden Girls, and I really hope it's the first of a series. I hope this isn't the last we see of it. It's called Murder by Cheesecake, and it's by Rachel Ekstrom Courage, and it's just come out this week. So mine arrived, the first day it was out. It's not published over here yet. Anyway, I'm one of my 7 chapters in, and I've just been loving it. I was reading it late last night, first thing this morning. It's cheesy as a cheesecake. It's mostly centering on Rose, which is interesting. And you would hope that further sequels would put the other girls at the heart of of each mystery. But this is about Rose being a wedding planner for relatives from St. Olaf and this contingent of Norwegians coming from her hometown to descend on Miami, being a bit disapproving. And Rose doing things like making tuna souffle, and the girls finding a frozen dead body in the freezer of the hotel where they're putting on this do. Everybody's present and correct. That's what's nice. Dorothy doing video dating and hooking up with a man and having an awkward date rings very true, but in a novel, although it doesn't kind of dwell in people's minds and miseries, like, you know, an ordinary novel, it keeps it light and it keeps it quite surfacey, I guess. You do get a bit more, and you do really feel for Dorothy going out on this date where the bloke asks her, just how old are you? It's lovely overhearing some of their thoughts. There's a pathos to some of the jokes that's gratifying as a long-term fan of these characters. You know, when Rose talks about Saint Olaf, it turns out it's all true. I suppose that's one of the things that a novel has to do as well. It has to figure out the reality of this, because she could have been joking, she could have been making it up, she could have been exaggerating to make her friends laugh, and I think we always thought that. But in this, it turns out it's all true. It's literally true. The craziness that she invokes with her daft stories. Anyway, I really hope there's more. I'm gonna maybe do a review and go on about it online to encourage them to do more of these. I'm sure there'll be a hit. I'm sure more people than just me, will find this and enjoy this. Although somebody was saying the murder mystery bubble in this country has burst in publishing. It's the usual faddy nonsense, isn't it? Cozy mysteries have been around forever. Just because there's been a few that have stood out as kind of massively successful in recent years, and the rush to copy them doesn't mean anything. The readership for a certain kind of golden age mystery with larger than life characters is always going to be there. That particular yen in the readership, I think. And this has it. This really has it. It's satisfying that itch to read a mystery. I don't really care about what the mystery is. That's my problem with murder mysteries. The mystery bit is kind of irrelevant for me. It's just the hook that it hangs on. I like the characters gaggling around and misbehaving or behaving to type. That's what's interesting about cozy mysteries for me. So, from the sublime to the ridiculous with these, which is just about right for my taste in books. I'm hoping the Golden Girls one is going to be a favourite and it won't let me down. But you never know. Okay, I've blethered enough. I hope everyone's well and you're going to have a nice weekend, holiday weekend here. We've got a couple of things to go to, but mostly I'll be reading and cooking. Goodbye, everyone. Sock says goodbye as well. He's snoozing. Goodbye. See you soon.